Every generation lives to see an international crisis.
The parading units start marching across the square amid resounding cheers. Columns from military schools of different levels are marching proudly, demonstrating the vitality of the party's line of making the entire army a cadre army and modernizing the entire army. They are marching with a feeling of great honor of being under Kim Jong-il's leadership.
Due to the ideologies of despotic rulers as well as a history of foreign intervention, the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, or DPRK, has developed over recent years as a highly industrialized and militaristic state. Yet, through the country's extremist pursuits to become a nuclear power and to unify both Koreas, North Korea has been consequently labeled as a terrorist state and has thus been isolated from the rest of the international community. The events surrounding modern North Korea's military pursuits had their origins in the Korean War. Prior, the Korean peninsula was brutally controlled by the Japanese. However, with the climax of World War II, Japan lost Korea, which was then divided along the 38th parallel due to political differences between North and South. Being the age of the Cold War, control of the peninsula switched to Russia and the U.S., who occupied North and South Korea respectively. Tensions in Korea increased until civil war broke out. Communistic and supported by the USSR, North Korea under Kim Il-sung invaded on June 25, 1950, only to come into conflict with the UN and American forces. The product of the Korean War was to separate nations divided by a demilitarized zone along the 38th parallel. Despite the temporary ceasefire and armistice, no peace treaty was signed. War rages on to this day between the North and South. Since the Korean War, little has changed. Skirmishes and assassination attempts between the North and South have continued, despite the presence of the DMZ. Although the great communist leader Kim Il-sung, who ruled since 1948, died in 1994, his son, Kim Jong-il, having the same ideology as his father, became the new supreme commander and chairman of the nation. Thus, the Democratic People's Republic of Korea continues to be run by a centralized and communistic dictatorship resembling Stalin's model. Desiring that communism spread throughout the whole Korean peninsula, the DPRK continues its conflict with the capitalistic South. To accomplish this goal of uniting Korea under the same government, DPRK, as of the late 20th century, resorted to the building of weapons of mass destruction, one of which was the Taepodong-1. Although North Korea claimed that the purpose of the missile was to transport the satellite Kwangmyong-sung No. 1 into space, the ICBM could have nuclear capabilities. The firing of this ICBM, although a failure, resulted in international hysteria. First to react was South Korea, who pleaded with the U.S. to have permission to extend the range of its missiles. Japan, similarly, reacted, deciding to break off diplomatic talks with the DPRK, to refuse to give food aid, and to ban commercial flights into North Korea. Not surprisingly, allies, China and Russia, reacted less harshly. Washington confronted Pyongyang, yet, in December of that year, another missile was launched, proving that the DPRK has no desire to change its ways. Kim Jong-il and North Korea continued its progress in developing long-range missiles. And in 2006 and 2009, the new Taepodong-2 was launched.
조선중앙통신사 보도 인공지구 위성 광명성 2호를 성과적으로 발사. 우리의 과학자 기술자들은 국가 우주개발 전망 계획에 따라 운반 로켓
Once again, North Korea received international outcry but never agreed to end its arms race. In addition to intercontinental ballistic missiles, the DPRK has developed a progressing nuclear program. In its many underground nuclear facilities, such as Kumchangrai and Yongbyon, North Korea has produced enough material for a total of 6 nuclear bombs. Upon learning the existence of these facilities, other UN countries have cut off funding for oil. However, North Korea still manages to reopen the funding. In addition to nuclear arms, the DPRK possesses chemical and biological weapons, drawing strong reactions from its southern neighbor as well from the rest of the world. Modern Korea in many ways resembles Nazi Germany. The country possesses large and somewhat powerful standing army throughout a mandatory draft. Military marches in tight formation along tanks show the DPRK's significant military tradition. While the country's wealth is all donated toward its military program, its citizens live in poverty and are neglected the basics of human rights. North Korea instills propaganda attacking South Korea and the U.S. into society in order to boost national pride and unity. In January 2002, President George W. Bush labeled North Korea as an axis of evil. The DPRK has earned a negative reputation over years of evil actions and threats. One such act was on December 17, 1994, when North Korean forces shot down a U.S. helicopter straying too far north of the DMZ. More significantly, the DPRK is responsible for the forced detainment of the 2 U.S. journalists, Laura Ling and Yoon Ah-lee. The 2 were forced to work in labor camps for 2 months until former U.S. President Bill Clinton negotiated for their release. Most recently, the South Korean naval ship Cheonan was sunk by a North Korean torpedo, once again causing tension in the region. The current state and actions of the DPRK can be explained by its past. Used to having foreign nations occupy it, sometimes brutally, North Korea has grown to be highly paranoid. This, as well as the fact that the country is run by unstable individuals, has influenced the country to this day. In many ways, North Korea resembles a vicious dog on a short leash. The UN, to keep the DPRK under control, has removed it from the international community, while threatening to respond to any sign of violence from the DPRK with deadly intervention. Because of North Korea's history of extremism, the world has treated North Korea as less than a nation and has isolated it in the process.